My family went viral celebrating the day I moved out, not knowing I owned the house Reddit stories. They mocked me publicly as a failure and a leech while thousands laughed along. What they didn't realize was how much power they just handed back to me. Hi. I'm Nolan, 31, and 2 months ago my entire family went viral for celebrating the best day of their lives. The day I moved out. They didn't tell me this, of course. They told the internet. I found out because my phone buzzed with a notification I wasn't meant to see. My mom, my own mom, had posted on Facebook. The 31-year-old leech is finally gone. No more cooking his meals or washing his underwear. Underwear she hadn't washed since I was 19. Meals she made against my request just so she could complain about it later. But sure. The 31-year-old leech. Her post had 1,247 likes. My Aunt Teresa commented, "Remember when he cried at 25 because McDonald's rejected him? Still unemployed. I didn't cry. I swore under my breath in the parking lot because the manager spelled my name wrong. Then my dad posted before and after photos of my childhood room. Before my bed, my desk, my life. After, a recliner, a neon sign that said man cave, and a mini fridge full of light beer. Caption: Upgrade complete. My sister Tabitha tagged all her friends and wrote, Ladies, never date a gamer. They never grow up. My ex-girlfriend Justine liked the post and commented, Wow. Dodged a bullet. 28 comments below hers agreed. Someone I'd never met even wrote, Tell him to get a job. And I calmly, methodically, screenshotted every single comment, liked each one, and said nothing. Not yet. Because I always play the long game. But to understand the long game, you need the short version of the truth. My family wasn't mocking a failure. They were mocking a man they thought was failing. A man they believed they had fully measured. A man they assumed they had power over. They didn't know that for 6 years I'd been running a profitable web development and digital marketing business from behind the door they never knocked on. They didn't know I had saved enough to buy a condo in cash. They didn't know I had been paying rent, 8 years of rent, to live in the house I legally owned. They didn't know because they never asked. They never listened. They never believed I could be anything but the disappointment they preferred. And while they mocked me publicly, loudly, triumphantly, I quietly packed boxes. I quietly hired movers. I quietly prepared the documents. And I quietly counted down 14 days. 14 days they did not know were their final days of living in my house under their delusion that it was theirs. 14 days before the mail would arrive, the first envelope that would crack their reality in half. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Because the worst part isn't what they posted. The worst part is how we got there. And why the implosion that followed was completely, mathematically inevitable. My grandmother died when I was 23. She left me her house. Not my parents. Not jointly. Not to the family. She left it to me. It was the house I grew up in, the house my parents had lived in since I was 10, the house they treated like their personal kingdom. I didn't expect it. My dad definitely didn't expect it. We all sat in the lawyer's office the week after the funeral, me, Mom, Dad, my sister Tabitha, Aunt Teresa, everyone wearing black like grief was a costume. The lawyer opened a folder, cleared his throat, and read, The residence located at 14 Marigold Lane is bequeathed to my grandson, Nolan. My dad actually laughed out loud. Not kindly. The laugh you give a child when they say something stupid and you're trying not to bark at them. He waved his hand and said, Yeah, but obviously we're staying there. It's our house. The lawyer adjusted his glasses. No, he said. It's Nolan's house. Your mother set a life estate condition. You may continue living there as long as you wish, but ownership belongs solely to him. My mom blinked hard, like she misheard English. Tabitha mouthed, What? And Dad, my brilliant, financially reckless father, went silent for the first time all day. The lawyer wasn't done. Your mother, he continued, Was concerned about previous financial tensions. Tensions. A delicate word for 20 years of borrowing money and never paying it back. Dad stiffened. Mom looked at the floor. Tabitha looked personally offended, as if Grandma leaving me the house was an attack on her social status. Me? I just sat there, stunned, holding a manila envelope addressed to Nolan only. Inside it, a handwritten note from Grandma. You're the only one I trust to take care of what I built. Don't let them pressure you. Love, Grandma. She knew. She always knew. Dad tried to salvage dignity. We're family, he said, grinning at the lawyer. What's ours is his, what's his is ours. The lawyer smiled politely in the way people do when they're mentally throwing holy water on a demon. No, he said. What's his is his. Dad didn't argue after that. He simply pretended the conversation never happened. Literally, never happened. The will? Forgotten. The ownership? Denied. Reality? Optional. Within a week, he was referring to the place as my house again. When friends visited, he gave them the tour. When something broke, he made the decisions. When taxes were due, guess who he suggested should pitch in because it's the responsible thing to do? Me. At 23, overwhelmed, grieving, broke, and still living in my childhood bedroom, I didn't fight him. I told myself, they're my parents. We'll figure it out. Spoiler. We did not figure it out. Over the next 8 years, I paid them rent. Rent. To live in a house I legally owned. $300 a month. For 96 months. $28,800 total. And if you think that was the worst of it, no. That was just the warm-up. Because my family had a talent, a hobby, really, for belittling me in ways they found downright recreational. Aunt Teresa brought up McDonald's rejecting him at every holiday dinner. Mom constantly joked that I was still unemployed. Dad rolled his eyes whenever I mentioned web development. Tabitha called me the attic troll because I worked in my room. But the truth, the part they never bothered to learn, was this. I was making more money than all of them combined. Quietly. Steadily. In a room they claimed I never left. But humiliation is a powerful glue. Once a family decides who you are, they stick to it like religion. And as the years passed, the comments got sharper. Crueler. Public. Then Justine dumped me because my living situation was embarrassing. And when she liked my mom's Facebook roast months later, I realized something. They didn't just misunderstand me. They enjoyed misunderstanding me. They needed me small. Pathetic. Pitiable. Because as long as I was the family failure, they could all feel successful. But then came the move-out day. The post. The likes. The comments. The celebration. The digital funeral for my dignity. And something inside me, not rage, not spite, but clarity, finally stood up. I wasn't going to argue. I wasn't going to defend myself. I was going to let them bury me publicly. And then I was going to show them exactly who they had buried. But that part comes later. Because before the reckoning, before the envelopes, before the utilities and the lease and the eviction, there was the move. And that moment? That's when everything started to unravel. When I told them I was moving out, they didn't believe me. Not couldn't. Wouldn't. My dad actually snorted. You, he said. Move where? Into a cardboard box? My mom chimed in. We'll co-sign if you need help, sweetheart. I said. I bought a place. They laughed. Not confused laughter. Mocking laughter. Dad slapped his knee like he'd heard the best joke of his life. With what money? I looked at him. The money I earned. Silence. Like the room blinked. Then Dad leaned back, crossed his arms, and said, Doing what? Playing on that computer? Yep. There it was. The years of dismissal packed into one sentence. Tabitha added, Wait, did you get scammed? Did you buy one of those fake condos overseas? And Mom. Mom did the one thing that almost made me lose it. She smiled pityingly. Oh, honey, you don't buy houses. You rent them. You're not ready for ownership. Ownership. Of the house I already owned. I didn't argue. Didn't correct. Didn't explain. Instead, I calmly said, The movers will be here in an hour. Dad's face dropped like someone unplugged him. Movers? Movers for what? You barely have anything. I gestured at my boxes. My neatly labeled, fully packed boxes. From the kitchen doorway, Tabitha screamed. What the hell? You packed everything without telling us? I looked at her. I didn't think my packing schedule was a group decision. That's when the panic started setting in. Not emotional panic. Financial panic. Hold on, Dad said, voice cracking. If you move, who's paying your rent here? I held in a laugh. I've been paying you rent. Mom blinked. That was different, she said. That was support. For who? For the household. I said nothing. They heard the quiet louder than any argument. Dad switched tactics. Anger, guilt, bargaining, like clockwork. You're abandoning us. Walking out after everything we've done for you. You've used this house for years and now you're just leaving? You're going to let us struggle alone? Oh. There it was. Not. We'll miss you. Not. We love you. Just. What will we do without your money? I didn't answer. Because I didn't need to. The doorbell rang. The movers were here. They came in, efficient and calm, grabbing boxes, carrying them out. Tabitha panicked. Stop! That stuff is family property. I said. It's mine. I bought all of it. Dad pointed at my desk chair. That's from this house. I bought it on Amazon. I have the receipt. Mom pointed at my computer. That stays. No, I said. It doesn't. She glared. How are you even paying them? You don't have a job. I finally turned to her. Mom, I make over 6 figures a year. Silence. The movers froze. Mom's face strained like she'd lost blood. Dad's jaw actually dropped. You, he whispered. 6 what? I nodded. I've been a freelance web developer and marketing contractor for 6 years. I pay taxes. I have clients. I have savings. I bought my condo in cash. Mom swayed like she might faint. Dad looked betrayed. You hid that from us? No, I said. I told you what I did for a living. You just never listened. Tabitha crossed her arms. If you had money this whole time, why were you paying us rent? Because you told me I had to. Dad threw up his hands. Well, now you're cutting us off. For the first time, I said. I'm not giving you money you never earned. The movers finished. My room was empty. My childhood was finally gone. As I walked out, Mom whispered, You're going to regret this. I stopped at the doorway. I turned back. No, I said. But you will. Because I already had a plan. Because the clock was already ticking. Because in exactly 14 days, they would understand something they had missed for years. I wasn't the leech. I was the lifeline. And they had just proudly, publicly cut it. The first 14 days after my move were the quietest days of my entire adult life. Not peaceful quiet. Dead quiet. No calls. No texts. No. How's the new place? No. Do you need anything? No attempt at reconciliation. Just silence. The same silence they gave me while I lived in that house for years. Except now they thought it was punishment. Meanwhile, I unpacked my condo. I hung my monitors. I installed my smart lights. I bought a couch that didn't smell like my dad's aftershave. And every day, I checked the tracking number. Because on day 15, something important was going to arrive at my childhood home. A small envelope. Thin. Official. Certified. Signature required. That envelope was not an eviction. Not yet. This was the warm-up. On the morning of day 15, I set my coffee down beside my keyboard and refreshed the tracking page. Delivered. 12:47 p.m. Signed by Dad. Perfect. 3 hours later, my phone exploded. Dad called. I let it ring. He called again. Declined. Mom called. Declined. Tabitha called from an unknown number like I'd fall for the jump scare. Declined. Then the text. Dad, call me now. Mom, please answer. This is serious. Tabitha, what the hell did you send us? I didn't reply. I didn't even smile. I just made pasta and watched them unravel in real time through notifications. Another call. Dad again. Then another text. Stop being childish. Pick up the phone. I ignored it. I watched a movie. I went to bed early. Friday morning, I woke up to 42 missed calls and voicemails. I played the first one while brushing my teeth. Dad trying for calm but cracking around the edges. Look, Nolan, we need to talk man to man. This paperwork you sent, this is unnecessary. Call me back. Second voicemail, Mom crying. We don't understand why you're doing this. We love you. Please, just talk to us. Third, Dad losing it. You have no right to send us this crap. This isn't legal. You're going to destroy this family. Fourth, Aunt Teresa. You need to rethink this, young man. Your parents took care of you for years and you repay them by threatening them? Your grandmother would be ashamed. Ah, yes. Grandmother. The woman who intentionally left me the house because she didn't trust her own son with it. Sure. Ashamed. I deleted them all. Then, finally, I texted Dad one single word. Okay. His call came half a second later. I answered this time. His voice was sharp, breathless. What the hell do you think you're doing? I said. You'll need to be more specific. The notice about the property, he shouted. You can't just send something like that. I can, I said. And I did. He sputtered. Mom grabbed the phone. Why are you treating us like strangers? I said. You treated me like a leech in front of 1,200 people. That was different, she cried. How? Silence. Then Dad. You are not our landlord. Legally, I said calmly. I am. And this, he choked on the word. This notice about our residence status, this is insane. It's documentation, I said. Nothing more. Dad snarled. We're not signing anything. That's fine, I said. Then you'll need to vacate the property within 30 days per the written notice. Pure silence. A whole 5 seconds where they didn't breathe. Then, you wouldn't. I would, I said. And I will. They both started yelling over each other, rage, panic, disbelief, denial. I hung up. Because the conversation was over. Because the paperwork was in their hands. Because the countdown had begun. The funny thing? They thought the notice was the bomb. It wasn't. It was the fuse. The bomb came next. And by the time it went off, there would be no going back. The second envelope was bigger. Thicker. Less. Friendly reminder. More, this is your new reality. I mailed it Monday morning. Certified. Tracked. Stamped with my lawyer's return address, not because I needed a lawyer yet, but because nothing terrifies stubborn people more than stationery with consequences. At 10:14 a.m., Dad signed for it. By 10:16 a.m., he was calling me. I didn't pick up. By 10:17, Mom was calling me. Ignored. By 10:19, Tabitha texted. What did you do now? Mom is screaming. I replied with, please refer to the documents. Dad called again. And again. And again. Ignored, ignored, ignored. Because I knew exactly what they were reading. I wasn't imagining the scene. I'd lived with these people for 20 plus years. Dad pacing the living room, red in the face. Mom crying into her sleeves. Tabitha snapping photos to send to her group chat. The envelope contained a formal month-to-month lease agreement. Rent, $3,000 per month, market rate for a 4-bedroom home in our area. A breakdown of utilities, currently in my name, with instructions for transfer. A statement of tenant responsibilities, including maintenance, noise, and property care. A 14-day deadline to sign or vacate. All standard. All legal. All exactly what they'd forced me into for years. Except this time, I was the one setting the terms. At 11:03 a.m. Dad finally left a voicemail worth keeping. I played it while eating leftover pad thai. Nolan, listen. We got your little lease. This is ridiculous. We're not paying you rent to live in the home we raised you in. Sign your papers, shred your papers, whatever. This is over. We're done entertaining this. Call me back when you're thinking clearly. Translation. He panicked. He refused. He pretended refusing made the problem go away. Classic Dad. At noon, Mom sent a long text. Nolan, sweetheart, your father is very upset. We can't afford $3,000 a month. Maybe we can find a compromise like $500? Please be reasonable. We don't deserve to be punished for a misunderstanding. We didn't mean the Facebook post. You know how people exaggerate online. There it was. The almost apology people give when they're sorry they got consequences, not sorry for what they did. I responded. Your offer is declined. Please sign the lease or vacate. 1 minute later, Dad called again, furious now, no politeness left. Where are we supposed to go? I took a sip of iced coffee. Anywhere you can afford, I said. You can't do this to your own parents. You've been charging me rent for 8 years to live in my house. That was different. How? Silence. Then he snapped. You think you're better than us now? Because you have money? Because you got a shiny condo? Let me tell you something. I hung up. Not angrily. Just efficiently. Because the conversation was no longer useful. 2 hours later, Tabitha called. Her voice was cold, clipped, managerial, like she was handling an HR incident she caused. You're being insane, she said. Mom can't stop crying. Dad is furious. You need to fix this. By fix, I said. You mean back down? Yes, she said flatly. No, I said. She scoffed so hard I could hear her nose wrinkle. You're really going to charge your own parents rent? You mean like they charged me rent? That was different. How? It just was. Exactly. The family motto. It's different when we do it. By evening, the group chat gossip had leaked to extended family. Aunt Teresa texted. You should be ashamed. Family comes before property. I replied. Property comes before freeloaders. She never responded. By midnight, none of them had signed the lease. They were stalling, denying, convincing themselves this was all a bluff. But the deadline was real. And they had no idea what the next step would be. Because the lease wasn't the threat. It was the line in the sand. And when they chose not to step on the correct side of it, I moved to phase 3. The one that would actually make them listen. By the time the lease deadline passed, they still hadn't signed. No surprise. My parents had built their entire lives on one belief. If you ignore a problem long enough, someone else will fix it. Usually me. Not this time. At 12:01 a.m., on the first of the month, the first domino fell. All at once. Not because I was being dramatic. Because I had scheduled every utility transfer and disconnection 2 weeks earlier. Electricity off. Gas off. Water off. Internet off. Every bill was in my name. Every bill was tied to my account. Every service provider followed the instructions. No exceptions. No emotions. Just protocol. At 6:23 a.m., My phone rang. Dad. Of course. I answered because I wanted to hear it live. The power's out, he barked. The water won't run. Nothing is working. I said. Correct. The services were in my name. They've been discontinued. You can't do that, he snarled. I gave you written notice, I said. We had food in the refrigerator. Mom screamed in the background. You should have signed the lease, I said. Dad sputtered like a lawn mower. This is abuse. This is logistics. You're punishing us. I'm enforcing boundaries. You're heartless. You're homeless if you don't follow instructions. Silence. The first real fear-based silence I'd ever heard from him. Then Mom got on the phone, crying so loudly the speaker cracked. How are we supposed to shower? Nolan, please. Please just turn the water back on. I can't, I said. Utilities require accounts in the resident's name. We don't have the money for deposits. That, I said, is not my responsibility. Dad yelled again. You're gonna call them and fix it. No, I said. We raised you. I almost laughed. You raised me to be exactly like you, I said, and now you hate it. I hung up. They called again immediately. Declined. They switched to texts. Mom, please. We are begging you. Dad, be a man and fix this. Tabitha, I always knew you'd turn into a monster. A monster. For expecting adults to act like adults. Around noon, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I answered. Nolan? This is Derek. Dad's coworker. He sounded tense. I need to ask you something. Your dad borrowed $5,000 from me. He said you were giving him money and he'd pay me back in 2 weeks. I closed my eyes. Of course. Of course, Dad pulled someone else into his sinking ship. He lied, I said. So you're not paying it? No. A long exhale. Then, well, I already told our boss. There it was. The other shoe. He continued quieter. There's going to be an investigation. He might lose his job. I'm sorry that affects you, I said, but it's not my debt. I hung up. 5 minutes later, Dad called, screaming so hard he could barely get words out. You got me fired. No, I said calmly. You got yourself fired. I wasn't part of the loan, the lie, or the investigation. You ruined us. You ruined yourselves. He made a noise I can only describe as a wounded animal. I didn't enjoy it. But I didn't save him either. That night, Tabitha appeared at my condo building, banging on the glass door, yelling into the intercom, causing a scene in the lobby. Nolan! Open the door! You're killing Mom and Dad! Residents stared. I said over the speaker. Leave, or security will escort you. She screamed. You're not part of this family anymore. And for the first time in my life, I felt absolutely nothing. Not sadness. Not anger. Just clarity. Because she was right. I wasn't part of their family anymore. I was finally part of my own life. The next morning, Dad sent a final text. Please. I stared at it for a long moment. 8 years of rent on a house I owned. A lifetime of being mocked for the job I built myself. A viral Facebook post celebrating my exit. And now, a one-word plea. I typed 4 words. Sign the lease. Or leave. Because this wasn't revenge. This was adulthood. And nobody had ever let me practice it until now. They thought I was bluffing. Even after the lights went out. Even after the water died. Even after the fridge warmed into a food coffin. They still told themselves the same fairy tale. He won't really do it. He's just emotional. He'll cave. He always caves. They didn't understand something crucial. The old version of me, the one who caved, died the moment they hit post. Tuesday morning, I filed the eviction. Simple. Clean. non-emotional. Just paperwork and a filing fee. By Wednesday afternoon, a process server delivered the documents to Teresa's apartment, where my parents had been camping out like guilt refugees. At 3:17 p.m., Dad called. I answered because I wanted this moment etched into memory. His voice was shredded. "Nolan, what is this? What is this? It's an eviction notice. You're..." He choked on the words. "You're doing this for real?" "Yes." Mom's voice crashed into the call, hysterical. "You're throwing us into the street." "No," I said. "You're being asked to vacate a property you don't own, after refusing to sign a standard lease. We are your parents. And I was your son when you called me a leech to 1,247 people." Silence. Not because they understood. Because they had no script for being confronted. Then Dad asked the question he'd been avoiding for weeks. "Where are we supposed to go?" I said. "Wherever people who don't pay rent usually go." He inhaled sharply, wounded. "You're heartless." "No," I said. "I learned from experts." He screamed and hung up. 2 hours later, Tabitha called. She didn't even pretend to be calm. "What is wrong with you? Mom can't stop crying. Dad hasn't slept. They're devastated. You need to fix this." I said nothing. Because the panic of people who relied on you but never respected you has a certain rhythm. She kept going. "You're acting unhinged. Mom is embarrassed. Dad is ashamed." I finally spoke. "They weren't ashamed when they mocked me online. That was a joke. That wasn't a joke to me. It was one post. It was the truth about how you all saw me." She went quiet. Then she said the quiet part out loud. "You were supposed to help them. You were supposed to be grateful. You were supposed to support the household." I said. "I supported the household for 8 years. She snapped. "That doesn't count." "Perfect. Absolutely perfect." "Goodbye, Tabitha," I said and hung up. The next day, Mom called from a grocery store parking lot, crying so hard she could barely breathe. "Nolan, your father lost his job." "I know," I said. "He said it was your fault." "It wasn't. He said you could fix this if you wanted to." "I don't want to." She gasped like the words physically hit her. Then, "We raised you better than this." "No," I said. "You raised me to accept less than I deserved." I stopped. I hung up. She called back 4 times. I didn't answer. By Friday, they had consulted someone, maybe a friend, maybe Google, because the tone shifted. Dad texted. "If we agree to sign the lease now, will you drop the eviction?" I replied. The lease opportunity expired. The eviction stands. The panic returned instantly. "Dad, we have nowhere to go." "Mom, please don't do this." "Tabitha, you are dead to us if this goes through." That one made me smile. Because being dead to them sounded suspiciously like freedom. That night, I sat on my balcony overlooking the city lights, my city, my condo, my life, and realized something. I didn't hate them. I didn't want revenge. I wasn't angry anymore. I was done. Done being the family scapegoat. Done being the walking wallet. Done being the punchline of their jokes. Done letting people who didn't respect me occupy space in my head, or my house. In a way, it was peaceful. They had finally forced me to grow into the person they always insisted I wasn't. Independent. Self-sufficient. Unafraid. And very, very willing to let them face the consequences of their own choices. The eviction would be final in 3 weeks. The house would be mine again. The peace was already mine. They didn't fight the eviction. They didn't show up to court. They didn't hire a lawyer. They didn't even file a response. Maybe they couldn't afford one. Maybe they finally realized I wasn't bluffing. Maybe they were too embarrassed to defend their behavior in a room where none of their Facebook audience could clap for them. The judge signed the order in less than 5 minutes. Just like that, the house was legally, Unquestionably, uncontestably mine alone, with no lingering. But we raised you in it. Fantasy to cling to. They had 72 hours to remove their belongings. Except, they didn't have many belongings there anymore. They hadn't lived in the house since the utilities shut off. They weren't coming back except to gather what they'd left behind: old clothes, broken furniture, sentimental junk they suddenly claimed I was heartless for not treasuring. Tabitha tried to guilt me one more time. She stood in the empty living room holding a dusty picture frame and said, "You've destroyed this family." I looked around the room where my mom had posted her triumph, the room where my dad had shown off his man cave, the room where I'd been invisible for years, and said, "No. You destroyed us when you made the whole world laugh at me." She opened her mouth, closed it, walked out. Mom didn't speak to me. Not one word. She avoided eye contact the entire time she packed boxes into her car at Teresa's building. When she finished, she stood by the trunk, brushed her hands together, and said quietly, almost to herself, "I don't understand who you are anymore." I said, "I finally understand who I am." Dad refused to show up at all. Pride or shame, I didn't care which. He sent one final text. "Hope you're happy. You ruined everything." I replied. Everything was already ruined. I just stopped living under it. Then I blocked his number. Tabitha too. Teresa. Any cousin who sent a lecture. Justine, of course. One by one, the noise disappeared. And for the first time in my life, my phone went silent in a way that felt like peace, not punishment. I stood in my empty childhood home, my property, my decision, my future, and walked through it slowly. No guilt. No doubt. No grief. Just closure. I shut off the lights, the temporary work lights I'd installed, locked the door, and left. 3 weeks later, the house sold for above asking. I wired part of the profit into savings, part into my business, part into a travel fund I'd never allowed myself to imagine. And on a quiet Friday evening, in my condo with city lights glittering outside, I made dinner for myself in a kitchen where nobody complained, nobody criticized, nobody left passive-aggressive comments online for strangers to upvote. I sat down with my plate, opened my laptop, and for the first time in years, I didn't brace myself for judgment. I didn't shrink. I didn't apologize for existing. I simply lived. And it felt like the first breath after years underwater. After the sale closed, something unexpected happened. Not from my family, they stayed silent, which was perfect. From me. For the first time in my life, I had nothing to clean up. Nothing to apologize for. Nothing to brace against. No collapsing financial emergency to rescue, no emotional minefield to navigate, no guilt leash around my neck. It was disorienting. Freedom always is at first. I threw myself into work. Not out of survival, out of joy. My business grew faster than ever. Without constant draining drama, I had energy. Clients noticed. My calendar filled. One afternoon, my accountant called and said something no one in my family had ever said to me. "You're doing really well." I didn't realize until I hung up that I was smiling. Then came the messages. Not from my family. From people who used to orbit them. First, a high school acquaintance messaged me. "Hey, saw your mom's post a while back. Guess she was wrong, huh?" Then an old coworker. "Dude, you moved out? Respect. Wish I had the guts." Then, hilariously, a message from one of Justine's friends. "Hey, are you still single?" Asking for a friend. I didn't answer any of them. Not out of bitterness. Because none of those people existed in my actual life. Not the life I had now. But the wildest part came 2 weeks later. I got an email. From Grandma's old lawyer. Subject line: Final asset distribution, for Nolan only. My stomach dropped. I opened it. Inside were documents I didn't know existed. My grandmother hadn't just left me the house. She had left A savings account I'd never known about. A small portfolio of bonds. A handwritten note the lawyer scanned and attached. I clicked the note last. Her handwriting shook a little in the final years, but the words were clear. Nolan, I know how your father treats things he doesn't earn. So I'm leaving these to you quietly. Use them when you are ready to live a life that is yours. You deserve peace. Love, Grandma. I stared at the screen. For a long time. Not crying. Just absorbing. Someone had seen me. Really seen me. Long before I saw myself. I closed the laptop, walked out onto my balcony, and took the deepest breath of my adult life. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even triumphant. I was free, and it felt like standing in a room with all the doors open. I didn't need my family back. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need them to apologize. I didn't need them to understand anything about me. I had a future that didn't require their permission. For the first time in 31 years, I had space to grow. And I wasn't shrinking again. Not for anyone. 3 months passed before anyone in my family tried contacting me again. Not Dad. Not Mom. Not Tabitha. Teresa. Of course it was Teresa. She called from a number I didn't recognize, so I answered out of instinct. Her voice was tight, sugary, and false in a way only people who think they deserve your labor can manage. Nolan. Hi. It's your auntie. We should talk. I said. We shouldn't. And moved to hang up. She rushed. Wait, your mother isn't doing well. There it was. The hook. The bait. The emotional net I had fallen into my entire life. Except now? I didn't even feel the tug. What does that have to do with me? I asked. Teresa gasped like I'd stabbed her. She's your mother. Yes, I said. And she publicly ridiculed me to 1,000 people for entertainment. That was a mistake. No, I said. It was who she really was when she didn't think there'd be consequences. Teresa switched strategies instantly. Your father hasn't recovered from losing his job. I didn't take his job from him. You could help. I could, I said. And I won't. She inhaled sharply. You're really going to abandon your family? I said. They abandoned me first. I just stopped pretending it didn't hurt. Silence. The kind that means the truth finally cut through the delusion. Then she snapped. You think you're better than us now. I almost laughed. No, I said. I think I'm better than I used to be. I hung up, blocked her, and felt nothing but quiet. A week later, something strange happened. I was walking home with groceries when I saw someone sitting on the steps of my condo building. Mom. She looked smaller, dimmer, clothes a little worn, hair unstyled. She stood as soon as she saw me. Nolan, she said softly. I didn't know where else to go. I didn't invite her inside. I didn't hug her. I didn't rage either. I just waited. She swallowed. I wanted to apologize. A real apology? No. Even from a distance, I could see the shape of it, the apology that isn't an apology, but a negotiation. She continued. Your father and I are struggling. We need. There it is, I said quietly. Her eyes flashed with hurt. I'm apologizing. No, I said. You're asking. She looked away. Her voice wavered. You've changed. I had to. She blinked at tears but kept going. Family is supposed to help each other. You helped yourselves to my labor, I said. To my silence. To 8 years of rent on my own house. That wasn't. It was. She wiped her face, shaking. Nolan, we just want things to go back to normal. I exhaled slowly. Normal for you was miserable for me. She stared at me like the truth was a foreign language. Like she couldn't understand it because she had never needed to see me clearly. Then she whispered, Do you hate us? I surprised both of us. No. I just don't belong to you anymore. Her face crumpled. Nolan, please. Just help us get back on our feet. For what return? I asked. For things to go right back to how they were? She didn't answer. She didn't have to. I stepped aside, not to let her in, but to signal the conversation was over. Take care of yourself, I said gently. But I'm not your safety net. Not anymore. She stood there, trembling, waiting for me to change my mind. I didn't. Eventually, she turned and walked away down the sidewalk. I watched her go, not with anger, not with satisfaction. Just closure. For the first time, I chose myself. And the world didn't collapse. It expanded. Back upstairs, I put away my groceries, made tea, and sat on my balcony overlooking a city that felt nothing like my childhood house. It didn't expect my labor. It didn't drain my resources. It didn't call me a leech when I left. It simply let me exist. Free. Independent. Whole. And that's when it hit me. My family didn't lose me because they posted that Facebook status. They lost me because they revealed who they were. And I, finally, believed them. Mom never called again. No dramatic showdown, no last attempt to pull me back into the old script. Just silence, the peaceful kind, the kind that feels like a door finally closing. I sat in my condo that night, lights warm, city quiet below, and realized something simple. I wasn't the family failure. I was the one who walked away. The one who changed the pattern. The one who chose himself, and stayed gone.